Lekutei Sichos Chelek Yud Miketz Aleph. A fascinating sikha that's going to address a question that Rashi ignores. Ask us, why does Rashi ignore such a glaring, obvious question? A question that many other Mefarshim address, and going to show us how by learning other Rashis, it turns out that this is not even a question in the first place. And it's so simple that you almost wonder why you thought it was a question in the first place. So we're going to go slowly through this because the question is going to build and build and build almost until the last ois, and then everything is going to become answered. So let's begin. And we're going to begin with a klal, which is one of the klalei Rashi, one of the rules in Rashi, that Rashi addresses anything that he believes to be a question. Even if he does not know the answer to it, he'll say Eini Yodeya. But if he doesn't say anything, it means that it's not a question. And that's the foundation of this sikha. Dubur kama pa'amim, it has been spoken many times. Shedarkish Rashi b'perushi alatera, the farish called davar akasha bilti muvim b'psutei shel mikra. The Rashi's way is to explain everything that becomes difficult or not understood in the basic understanding of the pasuk. Those things that seem to need an explanation in the simple understanding of things, the Ein Rashi Mefarshim, and Rashi does not address them and explain them. That itself is the proof that according to Rashi, these things, these questions are understood simply. So much so that there's no need to explain them. Either they're so simple that they're not even a question in the first place, or else by looking in a different Rashi and seeing what Rashi explained in a different place, this will answer the question that seemed to have been here. Based on this, we have to understand a very great question, which arises when learning the simple understanding of the psukim in this parsha. The Kama Mefarshei Amdu Allah, and a number of the commentators of Chumash address the question. The Dafka Rashi Reisha Pashtonim Einoi Meir Alzeh, and Rashi, who is the chief commentator, the one who is the most important in a way of all of those who give pshat on Chumash, does not comment on this at all. And the question, this glaring, obvious question that all of the other Mefarshim talk about, and Rashi does not talk about it, is Yosef Yosef certainly knew the intensity of his father's love towards him. So he obviously understood the great pain and mourning that his father was experiencing over his loss. Why does Yosef not let Yaakov know that he's alive? In Order 3 mentioned, it says, some of the Mefarshim address this. So very quickly, just to see the various different pirushim, even though they're not pshutei shel mikra, the Ramban says that Yosef didn't tell his father because he needed to see the dreams to be fulfilled. He knew that the Eibishter made a dream. There must be the fulfillment of the dream, so he had to wait it out. The Baalei HaTosfos say that if he was afraid it would cause Yaakov more pain to know that his brothers, his children, sold their brother. Another reason in the Baalei HaTosfos is that he was afraid that his brothers would run away out of fear of Yaakov, and then Yaakov would be left with no one. The Akedah says something very interesting. He says that Yosef saw the years of hunger, the years of famine coming, and he figured, let him strengthen his position to be able to help either the Mitzrayim or to help his own family when the time comes. So he wanted, before he wanted to go back to Yaakov and tell him what was going on, he wanted to first strengthen his position as viceroy of Mitzrayim. In the Rachaim, he says he didn't want to embarrass his brothers. Chazal tell us it's better to jump into a fire than to embarrass another person. He knew going to Yaakov would be discovered what the Shvatim did, and that would embarrass them. Now, clearly these are not Pshuta Shel Mikra, and each of them has a question which is not our place to ask at this time. But I just wanted to give you a glimpse into some of the other Mefarshim and how they address this question, and how primary this question is to the Mefarshim. But as we see in the Sikha, Rashi does not address this question at all. Why are we asking it in Parshas Miketz, not in Parshas Vayeshev when Yosef gets sold? So he says, this question applies primarily to the time period of our Parsha, Parshas Miketz, because the Parshas Vayeshev Mesuper Sheidu is Yosef Mitzrayim Machru Levet. Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim and he was sold as a slave. And then he was placed in jail. So obviously he did not have an opportunity to send a message to his father. But in the time period being discussed in our parsha, when Yosef became Mishnah L'Melech, the second in command, and had the permission to do whatever he wants, any movement is not understood. Why would he leave his father suffering and mourning, and did not inform him via the various different caravans that were traveling to the land of Canaan, or to send a special messenger, as he mentions in Araf 5, that the traveling distance between Mitzrayim and Hebron was 4 or 5 days. Not a big deal in those days. So he could have either sent it through the caravan or sent a special messenger to tell Yaakov Shehu Chai v'yechayes nefesh aviv, and this would revive the soul of his father. So this is this simple but glaring question: why does Yosef not inform his father that he is alive? Now, this is not really the first time that this issue comes up, not by Yosef per se, but why Yaakov remained in the dark all of these years. So in Parshas Vayeshev, Rashi addresses this, why Yaakov could not know. So in Eis Beis he starts, L'cheira yav shelemar shetmi yazumu turetzes al pi ma shepirish Rashi lifnei Parshas Vayeshev. That the question, why didn't Yosef tell his father, would be answered by a Rashi in Parshas Vayeshev. Over there, Rashi says, "Da'atam sheYaakov is abil al b'nayamim rabim." Why did Yaakov have to mourn his son for so many days, so many years? 22 years. So he says, Chav Beishan, Rashi says it was 22 years, Misha Peidash Mimenu. From when Yosef was separated from his father until Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim was 22 years. As he says, that it says Yosef was ben Shvayas Reishana. He was 17 years when he went down to Mitzrayim. And then it was only 22 years later that Yosef was 30 years when he went in front of Parai. Then there was 7 years of Sava and 2 years of hunger. So he's about 40 years old or 39 years old when Yaakov comes down. 7 years of Sava and 2 years of Rav. So it was a total of 22 years from when Yosef left till Yaakov is reunited with Yosef. And Rashi says this is Kineged Chav Beishana Shalekiyim Yaakov Kibud Aveim. This is Kineged the 22 years that Yaakov was separated from his father and could not perform the mitzvah of Kibud Aveim. Yaakov was 20 years by Lavan, and it took him 2 years to get back, or almost 2 years to get back. That 22 years. So because Yaakov was separated from Yitzchak for 22 years, therefore Yosef had to be separated from Yaakov for 22 years. And based on this, Rashi, we could apply the same thing to Yosef. And therefore Yosef could not tell his father that he's alive before 22 years would pass. So because Yaakov's punishment had to be 22 years. The 22 years that he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Kibbud Avim. And therefore Yosef couldn't say anything. But of course, Rabbi is going to say over here that for three reasons this explanation does not work. Even if it's true that the separation of Yankov from Yosef for 22 years was a consequence of his separation from his father Yitzchak for 22 years, that does not explain or excuse the conduct of Yosef. Key for the following three reasons. Aleph, Minayin Yada Yosef shal Yaakov lekabel einish chaf beishana. Al zeh shelekiyim kibbud avim. How does Yosef even know this? How does Yosef know that Yaakov needs a punishment for 22 years and therefore he has to wait before he could tell his father that he's alive? And even if you're going to tell me that Yosef did know, Hari Aleph, Ya'aya Yachal Leidiyah Shehu Chai, he could have left him a message, sent him a message that he's alive, without telling him where he's living, and wait 22 years. And then Yaakov would be punished by the separation from Yosef for his separation from his father. And in the other 32, which is not here, but it's later on in the Sikh, he actually addresses that maybe knowing he's alive and not knowing where he lives is not enough of a punishment. But l'chayre, the punishment should be midah kineged midah. So just like Yaakov was away from his father, although he knew his father was alive, but he was away from his father and didn't do kibbud avim, and therefore Yosef had to be away from Yaakov. But it was okay, seemingly, that Yaakov should know that Yosef is alive. So why couldn't Yosef send a message that he's alive? Gimel ve'ikr. Here's the third and most important of the questions. This idea that Yaakov had to be separated from Yosef for 22 years does not explain Yosef's conduct. Even if it was decreed upon Yaakov to have a punishment for these 22 years, this still doesn't give the permission to Yosef to punish his father. There are times that there are things that are decreed upon a person that doesn't give another person the right to impose those punishments on that person. Just because it was decreed upon Yaakov of a punishment does not give Yosef the right to enact that punishment. The dugma lazeh, for example, ein makim loymar she'ashvatim ayu mutarim ayu gam mechuyavim limkir es Yosef bishvil sheyiskaymu chalim Yosef yiskayim einish Yankov. There's no way to say that the shvatim were allowed to, or even more so, obligated to sell Yosef in order for his dreams to be fulfilled and Yaakov's punishment to be fulfilled. If Yaakov's punishment has to be fulfilled, the only way for his punishment to be fulfilled is for Yosef to be sent away. So maybe it's a mitzvah for the brothers to sell Yosef so that Yosef should be separated from his father for all these years. Clearly that's not true. The brothers were never allowed to sell Yosef. Certainly they weren't obligated to sell Yosef. So too, Yosef is not obligated, or Yosef is not even allowed to allow his father to be punished. Even if it was nigzer alav ben hashamayim, even though it was decreed on Yaakov from heaven, does not give Yosef the right to enact that punishment. So we're back to our original question: why does Yosef not inform his father that he is alive and minimize his father's pain and his father's suffering? So to answer this question, in Oz Gimel, we're going to address why the Eibishter, why Hashem and Yitzchak don't tell Yaakov what happened to Yosef. That's Oz Gimel. To understand this, we have to first preface that which Rashi talks about in Parshas Vayeshev, there Shembir, which there too, we have to understand that Rashi as well. Rashi says, is talking about Atam, Lama Legila Kadosh Baruch Hu Liyankiv Sheyosef Chai. Why does Hashem not reveal to Yaakov that Yosef is alive? So Rashi says, Pirush Rashi, the Shvatim made a cherem, a ban, an excommunication, the Kidulu, and they accursed as Kol Misha Yegala, anybody that would reveal the details to the story to Yaakov Avinu. And then they included the Eibishter in the cherem, and therefore Hashem could not say anything because he was included in the cherem that was made by the Shvatim. Mamshich, then Rashi continues, Aval Yitzchak Yedei Sheuchai. Yitzchak knew. So first, before I say that, I just want to point out that what does it mean that they included Hashem in the cherem? That's going to be part of the discussion of the Sikha. What does it mean that they included Hashem in the cherem? Aval Yitzchak Yedei Sheuchai. Yitzchak knew he was alive. However, he said, how could I reveal to Yaakov where Yosef is? When Hashem himself does not want to reveal to Yaakov where Yitzchak is, where Yosef is. And again, as we're going to see in a moment, we have to understand what does it mean that Yitzchak doesn't want to reveal it because Hashem doesn't want to reveal it. If Hashem is part of the cherem, what does it mean Hashem does not want to reveal it? And that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to look at this Rashi. If you saw this Rashi inside, or if you're looking in the source sheet, so you're following from here, we're about to dissect this Rashi. We have to understand. Who was included, and upon whom does it apply this cherem and this klala? You can't say that anybody in the world was included. The cherem applies to any person living in the world that would reveal to Yaakov what happened to Yosef. Because if it meant everyone, then it's not understood. Aleph Hemshech Divrei Rashi Aval Yitzchak Yedeya Omar Ha'echa Gala v'chulu. Rashi later says that Yitzchak knew where Yosef was, but he says, how could I reveal it if Hashem doesn't want to reveal it? That those words don't make sense. Because if the cherem would have included everybody, it would include Yitzchak. So Yitzchak should say, I'm in the cherem. Rashi doesn't say that Yitzchak was in the cherem. He says Yitzchak didn't reveal because Hashem is not revealing. Which is a proof that the cherem didn't include everybody. Beis, another proof that the cherem does not include everybody. Why do they have to include Hashem specifically with them in their cherem? If the cherem includes everybody, it automatically includes the Eibishter also. Why do they have to specifically include Hashem into their cherem? It must be that the cherem does not automatically include anybody in the whole world. The cherem was applicable only to those who participated in the cherem. When it says that they made a cherem on anybody who would reveal, hakavana, the intent of those words is to all those people who were present at that moment and participated in the cherem. And that's why they had to include Hashem, to say, Hashem, we mean you as well, because it was the 10 brothers together, and they were the ones who were making the cherem for themselves, and they had to explicitly include Hashem with them, because otherwise Hashem would not have been included. So the first thing we understand from this Rashi is that when it says in Rashi, it means specifically the Shvatim who were present at that maimed, at that event. But based on this, if they only included those who were there, and then they were specifically included the Eibishter with them, and the chedim is now chal, chedim is now applicable to Hashem as well, we're going to have to understand a number of questions. Aleph, number one, the shenish of Rashi, the lashon of Rashi, the wording of Rashi is Aval Yitzchak, Amar Yitzchak knew that Yosef was alive, and he said, Ha'echa Gala, how can I reveal to Yosef, to Yaakov, that Yosef is alive? Because Baruch Hu einay roitze legales, when the Eibishter does not want to reveal it to him. Why is he saying that it's Hashem wants or doesn't want? Hashem was included in the Chedim, and therefore he was sworn not to reveal. He was forced not to reveal Kavayachol. Umikan. And based on this, comes the second question. Lama nimna Yitzchak melagalis leYaakov. Mitam shakaz baruch enu megalale. Why does Yitzchak refrain from revealing to Yaakov because Hashem is not revealing to Yaakov? Hashem can't. Because he was because they included him in the Chedim. This does not this does not stop Yitzchak from revealing. Yitzchak was not included in the Chedim. Question one is, why does Rashi say Hashem doesn't want if Hashem cannot? And question number two is, since Hashem cannot, Hashem is forced by the Chedim, but Yitzchak is not forced by the Chedim. So it still doesn't explain why Yitzchak doesn't reveal to Yaakov that Yosef is alive. Gimel, Chedim Zalama. Who needs a Chedim in the first place? Chedim is an excommunication. It's a very severe a move. It means the person is not part of the Kehillah, person can't be counted for a minyan. It's a very serious step to take. Who needs a Chedim? Why can't they just make a deal, a discussion amongst themselves, an agreement that no one's going to tell? And similarly with regards to Hashem, you can't make a deal with Hashem, but to daven to Hashem and ask of Him not to reveal. Why do you need a Chedim? Daled, fourth question. We don't find either in Pshut Shel Mikra or in Rashi that the Shvatim released the Chedim before they informed Yaakov that Yosef was alive. If this Chedim was so powerful that none of the brothers are able to do anything to tell Yaakov, then how all of a sudden did they go and tell him that Yosef Chai? Oh, okay. So let's just summarize quickly. Is Gimel wanted to suggest that before we suggest, I'm sorry about that. Ois Gimel said that we have to first understand another Rashi. The Rashi that says why the Eibishter did not reveal to Yosef that Yaakov that Yosef was alive, because there was a Chedim that was made. So we clarified that the Chedim included only the Shvatim and the Eibishter. And we asked four questions. Number one, why does Rashi say that Eibishter doesn't want to be Megala, and not that the Eibishter was sworn that he can't reveal? Number two, why does that affect Yitzchak? Yitzchak wasn't part of the Chedim, so why can't Yitzchak tell Yaakov where Yosef is? Number three, who needs a Chedim? And number four, when was the Chedim released to allow the Shvatim to talk to Yaakov? In Ois Daled, we're going to discuss whether the Eibishter was actually forced by the Chedim. V'hinei. Yes, mefarshim. There are certain mefarshim that explain Kavanas Rashi al derech ha-Medrash Tanchuma. That explain the Rashi according to the Medrash Tanchuma, which is Makar of Pirush Rashi. The Makar of this Rashi, that the Shvatim made a Chedim, comes from the Tanchuma. So they learn in the Rashi the way they learn in the Tanchuma, in the following way. In the Yisasham, the Medrash Tanchuma says like this: Amru nachrim beinenu. They said, let us make a Chedim amongst us. that none of us will tell Yaakov Avinu, our father. So Yehuda says, Reuven is not here. Reuven was going to do tshuva for the fact that he got involved in the sleeping arrangements of his father and his mother. Or another pshat is that it was his turn to take care of Yaakov Avinu. Either way, Reuven was not present, and that's why they sold Yosef without Reuven being there. So Yehuda says, Reuven is not here, and we need to have 10 people to make a chedem. What are we going to do? What do they do? So they joined the Eibishter into the chedem. That they shouldn't tell their father. So therefore they made a chedem and they included the Eibishter as the 10th of the minyan. And once the chedem was made, also the Eibishter chose to follow the chedem. Just to explain in the lashon of the sikha, to explain how they understand this medrash. They joined the Eibishter in making and applying the chedem to them, to the 9 brothers. They needed a 10th in order for the chedem to be ratified. But the Eibishter wasn't part of the chedem that he too should not be allowed to tell the Shvatim, to tell Yaakov. And then the Eibishter chose, in order to not diminish the weight of their chedem, the Eibishter chose to be included in them. Just to explain again what we're saying over here. The chedem was going to be on the 9 people, the 9 brothers that were there, meaning to say, excluding Binyamin, excluding Yosef, and excluding Reuven. The Eibishter was being used for a minyan on a chedem that was being applied to the 9 brothers. And then the Eibishter chose to be part of the chedem as well, to give extra strength to the chedem. That's how the Medrash Tanchuma, that's how these Mefarshim explain the Medrash Tanchuma, and that's how they understand Medrash Tanchuma, and that's how they explain Rashi, that according to Rashi, the Eibishter was not included in the chedem, he was just used as part of the minyan, and then the Eibishter chose to follow the chedem for himself as well. Now we understand why they had included Hashem, why they have to include Hashem in the first place. They had to do so because they needed a minyan. And according to this, it's understood what Rashi says. The words are that the Eibishter does not want to reveal. And Rashi doesn't say that he's been sworn not to reveal. Because the Eibishter himself was not included as one of those who were forbidden by the chedem to reveal. And the Eibishter chose not to reveal to Yaakov. And therefore Yitzchak said, if Hashem is choosing not to reveal, then I too should choose not to reveal. What does this understanding help us? At least it'll help us understand the Rashi. What does Rashi mean? That shitvu la'akadosh baruch hu. What does it mean? Ein eretz legalis. And now we know why Yitzchak wasn't megala, which was one of some of the questions that we had in Eis Gimel. In Eis Gimel we asked, why did Rashi say ein eretz legalis? Why does Yitzchak not participate? Why does Yitzchak not reveal to his son that Yosef is alive if he's not part of the chedem? But according to this understanding of the Mefarshim, at least those 2 questions are answered. This understanding of the Tanchuma does not work according to the Rebbe in the basic understanding of Rashi. Key in brackets. Besides the fact that Rashi does not explicitly tell us when the chedem was done, to say that maybe Reuven wasn't there, On the contrary, it makes more sense to say that they waited for Reuven to come back to make the Chedim. And then they were 10, so that the Chedim should apply to him. To Reuven, and Rashi should have explained why Reuven doesn't say anything. Just like Rashi has to explain to us why the Eivisha says nothing. And just like Rashi has to explain to us why Yitzchak says nothing. If Reuven is not part of the Chedim, then he should have had to tell us why Reuven says nothing. And if Reuven wasn't there, you can't just include Reuven. Because we said in the beginning of the Sikha that when it says that Kol Misha Yegala was referring to the people who were present. So if Reuven wasn't there, then he wouldn't have been included. And then the question is, why doesn't he tell his father where Yosef is? Since Rashi doesn't address that, obviously it makes more sense to say that Reuven was part of the Chedim. Especially since there's no clarity on this matter when the Chedim was done. So if we don't know for certain, it makes much more sense to say that Yosef, that Reuven was part of the Chedim, and he was present at the making of the Chedim. But there's a bigger question here. Not in the Psukim and not in Rashi is there any indication whatsoever that you need to have 10 for the Chedim. Rashi, where Rashi explains that the Shvatim made a Chedim on anybody who would reveal to Yaakov where Yosef was, Rashi should have explained that the Chedim was Ba'asara. And since Rashi does not address that a Chedim needs to be with 10, means to say that this idea that they had to be Meshatev the Eibush because they needed a 10th is not part of Rashi's understanding of the Medrash. Shekavanas Rashi is b'shitva l'Akadosh Baruch Hu imam hainu shegam HaKadosh Baruch Hu kiviyachol nasser al yedei zeh. So we must say that Rashi understands the Medrash that the Eibishter was actually included in the prohibition against telling Yankov anything. The Chol HaKushas are now b'toikvan, and our questions are back in full strength. Why does Rashi say Nereitza Legalis? Why is Yitzchak not Megalis since the Eibishter is forced, but Yitzchak is not forced? And then our initial question is certainly if we don't know why Yitzchak is not revealing because he's not part of the Chedim, and we don't know why Yosef is not revealing because he's not part of the Chedim. Before we're not yet ready to get to the answer. We have one more question which has to be addressed in Ois Hey. And that is, how do we even know that the Eibishter participated in the Chedim? Mela, a human being, he could say yes, he could say no, we could hear what he answers. But the Eibishter, how did we know that he was part of the Chedim? That's the discussion in Ois Hey. Hine, okay, so just before we get to Ois Hey, our initial question was, why does Yosef not tell his father that he is alive? Then we wanted to explain that it was because of the 22 years. But we said that does not explain Yosef's conduct. Yosef may have not known. Even if he would have known, it doesn't explain why he didn't say at least that he was alive, and it doesn't even explain why he's not the one that should be imposing the punishment on Yaakov. Then we brought in another Rashi. We asked a number of questions. Why didn't the Eibishter tell? Because the Eibishter was part of a Chedim with the Shvatim. Why does Yaakov not tell? Yitzchak not tell? Because Yitzchak said, if Hashem is not telling, why should I tell? But we didn't understand. Why does Rashi say that Hashem doesn't want to reveal? Why is Yitzchak bound by what the Eibishter is doing? Seemingly the Eibishter was bound by the Chedim and Yitzchak is not. Who Bechlal needs a Chedim? And when was the Chedim released? And don't tell me, says is Dalid, that the Eibishter wasn't really part of the Chedim and he only chose to join the Chedim, and therefore the Yitzchak chooses to copy the Eibishter, because there's no indication in Pirush Rashi either that Hashem was needed for the 10th, or that according to Pshut Shel Mikra, that we don't even know that you need a tenth. So now, let's address the next question. How do we know that the Eibishter agrees to the Chedem? The Mefarshei asks another question. How do the Shvatim know that the Eibishter agrees to the Chedem? Even a human being cannot be included unless he agrees. How did the Shvatim join the Eibishter into their Chedem without knowing that he agrees? And the Mefarshei Rashi bring various different reasons that tell us that the Shvatim knew that the Eibishter does not want to reveal to Yaakov, and that's how they knew that the Eibishter would agree with them. What are these reasons? So we're going to bring three of them. Aleph, in order to fulfill the promise that the Eibishter made to Avram Avinu by the Bris Ben Absarim, that the Yidden, the fourth generation will go that the third generation or the fourth generation will go down to Mitzrayim. So therefore, if Yaakov discovered that Yosef was alive, then he wouldn't have to go down to Mitzrayim. Yosef could come up, whatever. The story wouldn't follow the way it did. So obviously the Eibishter wasn't going to say anything because he needed the Ben Absarim he needed the Yaakov to go down to Mitzrayim. Based the second reason brought in the Mefarshim, which was already mentioned earlier, and Rashi brings it as well. That Yaakov has to be punished for the 22 years that he didn't fulfill Kibbud of Aim. So therefore Hashem couldn't get involved and say anything because he needed these 22 years to finish. Gimel, Yaakov Esbanav. Hashem didn't want that Yaakov should curse his own children. And then his offspring will cease to exist. And the whole future of Klal Yisrael would not happen. So Hashem couldn't say anything to Yaakov because how did Yosef end up in Mitzrayim? His brothers sold him. The brothers who sold Yosef, and then their children wouldn't carry on. So based on these three explanations, the Shvatim believed that Yaakov, that the Eibishter would not tell Yaakov, and the Eibishter would agree to their Chedem. Avol. Without even going that each of these questions, each of these explanations carry their own questions. There's their own, which doesn't go into the Sikha. They are mentioned in Order 25 and Order 30, where why each of these answers are not really a good answer. But besides for that, we cannot explain that Rashi is relying on these reasons to understand how they knew how the Shvatim knew that the Eibishter would agree to the Chedem. And he's going to explain why in the next paragraph. Just to point out, which is what he's going to say in the next paragraph, but I just want to give a few words to introduce it because it's a little wordy, if you will. According to these three reasons, Yosef and Yaakov could not reunite. But to know that Yosef is alive, just not to know where or how he ended up there, none of these three reasons address that. In other words, if Yaakov knew that Yosef was alive, but didn't discover until later that he was Mishnah L'Melech in Mitzrayim, he would have still got down to Mitzrayim and the Bris Ben Absarim would be fulfilled. If Yosef didn't know if Yaakov didn't know where Yosef was for 22 years, he would still be a punishment on him, like we said earlier, Midah Keneged Midah. He separated from his son for 22 years. And if Yaakov knew that Yosef was alive, but he didn't know that the brothers are the ones who sold him, then he wouldn't curse his sons. And that's what he's going to say in the next paragraph, that we see that the Chedem wasn't about keeping Yaakov and Yosef away. The Chedem was about not Yosef, not Yaakov, not even knowing that Yosef is alive. And these three reasons don't address that. Let's see it inside. Rashi mamshich aval Yitzchak yedei shehu chai. Yitzchak knew that he was alive. How can I reveal to Yaakov if Hashem doesn't want to reveal to Yaakov that he's alive? Shehu chai. And why does the Eibusher not want to tell Yaakov that Yosef is alive? Before it says clearly, because they made a chedem and they cursed anybody that would reveal to Yaakov that Yosef is alive, and they included Hashem in the chedem. Therefore, we must say, Yosef. The chedem and the klala apply not just to someone who would reveal the whole story of the sale of Yosef. The chedem applies even to someone who would just tell Yaakov that Yosef is alive. That's what you say in Rashi. Yitzchak knew that he was alive, and he said the Eibishter is not revealing that he's alive. How could I reveal that he's alive? Which means the chedem wasn't just about the story of the sale of Yosef. The chedem was on even just telling Yaakov that Yosef is alive. The time anal machrichim rak shekos baruch hu only force Hashem to not tell the whole story. That the Shvatim sold him to a group of Yishmaelim, which later brought into Mitzrayim, etc. But according to these three reasons, the Eibishter could have still told Yaakov that Yosef was alive. And all he has to do is not tell him where he is. What's happening to him until 22 years. Then there'll be the years of famine. And Yosef will be the second in command. Yaakov will be forced to go down to Mitzrayim. And then all three things will be fulfilled. The Bris Ben Absarim will happen. Yaakov will have been punished for 22 years for not fulfilling kibbutz of aim. And he would never curse his sons because he would never know that they were the ones who sold him. So therefore, these three reasons only explain to us why Hashem wouldn't tell Yaakov that Yosef is alive. That we wouldn't tell Yaakov the whole story. But it does not explain to us why Hashem could not tell Yaakov that Yosef is alive. Obviously, the chedem was on the fact that Yosef was alive. And we're back to our question. How do the Shvatim know that Yosef, how does Shvatim know that the Eibishter joined their chedem? So we end up at this point with a number of questions. Question number one, why does Yosef not reveal to his brothers to reveal to his father that he is alive? Question number two, why does Yitzchak not reveal to Yaakov that Yosef is alive? Why does he feel bound by a chedem if the chedem was applicable to Hashem and not to him? Why b'chlal do we need a chedem? When was the chedem released? And how do the Shvatim know that the Eibishter participated in the chedem? So in other words, over the few things that we brought up along the way, we built up the list of questions. Why does Yosef not say anything? Why does Yitzchak not say anything? Why do we need a chedem? When was the chedem released? And how did the Shvatim know that the Eibishter actually joined their chedem? In Ois Vav, we're going to answer all of these questions with one more question. I know you think we have so many questions. This one question leads us straight to an answer that leads us to answer all the questions. Ois Vav. V'abir b'chalana. To explain all of the above, Yuvam Bahaktim Tmiya Neisefes will be answered by first introducing one more question. Eich yitachin shef echad mibnei Yankiv leyiseder b'tshuva al mechirasei shel Yosef V'yisvade v'yisaper leYaakov shemachru es Yosef ve'edenu chai. How is it possible that not one of the brothers did not have a hidur tshuva, was not awakened or aroused to do tshuva, confess, tell Yaakov what happened to Yosef, and that Yosef is still alive? Ubefrat shematzinu b'parshaseinu shesof sof kula mischartu, that we find in the parsha that they ultimately did regret what happened. As the pasuk says, "Vayemru yishalachiv, aval Hashem anachnu alachinu." The men said to their brothers, "We are at fault. We are guilty for our brothers." Asher inu saras nafshe b'scharnu elenu. We saw the pain of his soul when he begged us, when he pleaded by us. So the brothers ultimately did all regret what happened. So how is it possible that for 22 years, not one of them had a feeling of tshuva and decided to come to Yaakov? That's the question. And that question leads us to our answers. Elo shezeis hoisa kavanasam basiyas achedim. Remember, one of our questions was, who needs a chedim? This was the purpose of the chedim. They were initially afraid. Right away they were afraid that when their anger will calm down, some of them will regret what they had done, and is going to want to reveal to Yaakov, and this would hurt all the others. And that's why they put in chedim. And they cursed anybody who would reveal. Not one of them has the right, or even some of them, even a group of them, do not have rishus, the permission legalis as a Yaakov to reveal what happened to Yaakov. Aval bevade she'ein svara leimar she'chrimu she'afilu be'im kula me'atzmam yachlitu legalis gam oz osir lem legalis. It's for sure that if they all that they could reveal to Yaakov, then that it would still remain also for everyone together. So that's obvious. But if one of them or some of them chose to want to reveal, they made a chedim. That's what would hold them back, because they knew one of them, two of them, three of them are going to say, "Come on, it's too much already. Let's tell Yaakov." She said, "No, we're making a chedim," and the chedim tells you that nobody could reveal anything to Yaakov until the chedim is lifted. Aval adayin yes chashash. There's still a concern. She'echad mehem eirubam, that one or some, even most of them, yitzer lachriach es hashar lishmeya lekele legalas leYaakov. That one of them or some of them will come and force the other ones that everyone else should agree. Valderech Pirush Rashi, like Rashi says in the beginning of the section after the section of Yehuda and Tamar, where it says that Yehuda went down to Timnasa. So Rashi says that they separated this parsha, that they stopped with this parsha because Yehuda lost his credibility by his brothers. Why? Sha'amru echav, because his brothers said, "Ilu amarta la'ashiva yoninu sheimim lach." Yehuda is the one who said, "Let's take him out of the pit and sell him to the traveling merchants." His brothers said, "Had you said not to sell him, not at all, just save his life, he would have listened to you." And because of that, Yehuda lost his status by the brothers. So we see that there was a possibility that the brothers would regret what they had done, and even if they beyond regretting, they would try to convince the others that we should go tell Yaakov. This is why they included the Eibishter in the Chedim. Hainu she'achlotas hadovar im umasa yigalu liYaakov tali b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The decision, if and when to reveal to Yaakov, depends on Hashem. Af kulam yachad, Einam Rashayim Legalis Ulalav Arachem. Even all of them together do not have the right to transgress the Chedem. Ki'im b'tzirufe v'askamasa shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, unless they have the agreement of the Eibishter. Aval eina kavana shekalos HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chedem u'muchrach shelei legalis. Clearly, it does not mean that the Eibishter was included in the Chedem and he's forced by the Chedem to not reveal. Like we said in Isai, we don't know that the Eibishter agreed. So to force the Eibishter to join the Chedem, we can't do. So in this, we're agreeing with the understanding of the Mefarshim in the Medrash that the Eibishter was not part of the Chedem. It's just for a different reason. Here we're saying that we can't include the Eibishter in the Chedem because we don't know if we agreed. What does it actually mean when they say Shitfu LaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Chedem, the Shvatim included Hashem in the Chedem? It means that they said that we are not going to reveal to anybody what happened, to Yaakov at least, what happened, until the Eibishter calls the shots, till the Eibishter lets them know that it's time to reveal to Yaakov. Now, which Rashi says that the reason the Eibishter didn't reveal it is because the Eibishter was joined into the Chedem. Hakavana, what Rashi means to say is Mikiva and Shem Shitvu LaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shem LeYagal Yaakov LeYaskamose. Since they included Hashem and they said that they will not reveal to Yaakov without the agreement of Hashem. Vitzirufe and the Eibishter's participation. Lachin, therefore, even though they did not intend that the Eibishter should be prohibited to reveal without their agreement, and they were saying we're not going to reveal without Hashem's agreement. They weren't saying that Hashem can't reveal without their agreement. But nevertheless, the Eibishter chose, so to speak, to join in with them. Shabitul hachedem v'gilui hadavar liYaakov, that to undo the chedem and reveal the information to Yaakov, yadavke b'shituf kulam, should be with the participation of everybody. Hakadosh Baruch Hu v'Shvatim Yachad, both Hashem and the Shvatim altogether. So we have to, before we continue going, we have to just understand that the entire understanding of Rashi, the Rashi in Vayeshev about this chedem, is entirely understood differently. That the Shvatim made a chedem. The reason they made a chedem was because they knew that one of them or some of them are going to regret and they're going to want to admit to Yosef what happened, to Yaakov what happened. So therefore they made a chedem. Even the chedem, they didn't trust themselves. They thought to themselves, one guy is going to come, and he's going to try to convince us, and we're going to be convinced, and it's not going to be the right time for whatever reason. And therefore they said, you know what, we have to include the Eibishter into this. That only once the Eibishter decides that it's time for Yaakov to know, only then will we release the chedem. And then the Eibishter chooses that he too will not reveal to Yaakov unless he has the agreement of the Shvatim. Now we understand what Rashi says, that the reason that the Eibishter didn't say anything to Yaakov is because he was included in the chedem. Yitzchak knew. But he said, how could I reveal if the Eibishter doesn't want to reveal? We were asked earlier, why does he doesn't want to reveal? Seemingly he was part of the chedem. So we just explained that the fact that the Eibishter is not revealing is by the Eibishter's choice, and he was not sworn in by the chedem. The reason that Hashem did not reveal to Yaakov the information was not because he was forced by the chedem that the Shvatim made, and because Hashem chose. He didn't want to reveal to Yaakov. He chose to participate in the chedem and to wait until there's an agreement of all involved parties to talk to Yaakov. And therefore Yitzchak learned from that. If the Eibishter says, I don't want to reveal it right now, then how should I, Yitzchak, go and reveal it? Now, peace and moving time, Yosef. So now we've answered the question. The question: how did they know that they used to agree to the Chedem? They didn't, and that's how why Hashem wasn't part of the Chedem. They only were relying on the Yebishter to tell them when to release the Chedem, and we know why they made a Chedem. And we know why he says Einei Reitze Legalis, because it was the Eibishter's choice to not reveal. And we've been working backwards. Now let's go back to our original question. Why does Yosef not tell his father that he is alive? Now we know the reason of Yosef as well. Since Yosef knew that the Eibishter does not want to reveal to Yaakov yet that Yosef is alive, this is a proof, a lesson, that Yaakov does not need to know that Yosef is alive. So Yosef says the same thing. He's literally quoting the same words as Yitzchak, and he's saying that, which is why Rashi doesn't have to say anything here, because Rashi already in Vayeshev said that there were others who knew and chose not to reveal because they were following in the Eibishter's footsteps. So there's no need to address it anymore. Yosef does the same thing as Yitzchak does, who is doing the same thing as what the Eibishter does. Which question remains unanswered? We've answered the question why Yosef doesn't tell Yaakov, because Yosef was following in Yitzchak's footsteps, which means he was following in the Eibishter's footsteps. What does it mean that the Eibishter participated in the Chedem? It means that the Eibishter was going to decide and tell them when the Chedem was to be released. That's why it says that Einei Reitze Legalis, because it's his choice to join the Chedem. And we know why Yitzchak didn't reveal, because the Eibishter didn't reveal. Which question was not yet answered? When was the Chedem released? That question was not yet answered. And that's what he's going to talk about in Isaiah. We have to still understand. According to this Chedem, it was also for the Shvatim to notify Yaakov that Yosef is alive. And even though Yosef was not part of the Chedem, but how does he tell them to tell Yaakov he's alive? If for 22 years Yosef wasn't revealing because the Eibishter wasn't revealing, just like Yitzchak wasn't revealing because the Eibishter wasn't revealing, then why all of a sudden now are they able to go and reveal? Also, this will be understood from Rashi, another Rashi that wasn't yet introduced. The Parsha saying all the pasuk with Yankif. In our Parsha, the pasuk says that Yaakov saw that there is shever, there's grain to be gotten in Mitzrayim. So Rashi asks the question: what did Yaakov see here or heard? What does he see? Rashi explains what did it mean that he saw? Yaakov saw in a holy lens or a holy mirror that he has hope in Mitzrayim. In other words, according to this understanding of Rashi, Yaakov saw that there was something in Mitzrayim waiting for him. It wasn't a clear nevuah Yosef that he should know that it's Yosef. This is all what Rashi says. But he saw that there's a reason to go down to Mitzrayim. There's hope in Mitzrayim. There's something that's drawing him, pulling him to Mitzrayim. However, the Shvatim knew that Yosef was in Mitzrayim. They knew right away that this vision that Yaakov was having in the holiness, in the holy lens. I knew what is really happening here. From the fact that Yaakov began to see something in his vision, from this the Shvatim derived that it has become the time that they should search for Yosef and find him and inform Yaakov that Yosef is alive. And therefore in Pasuk Gimel, when it says they went down to Mitzrayim, it says Vayedu Achei Yosef. And Rashi explains, so they regretted his selling him. made up in their heart that they're going to treat him in a brotherly way, and to ransom him. And any money, any price that they will be given, in other words, all of a sudden they go down, they're going to find Yosef, they're going to release him, they're going to ransom him, they're going to pay whatever price. And they call him Achei Yosef, not Bnei Yaakov. Because now that they saw this message, that Yaakov was seeing Yeshev Mitzrayim, there's hope in Mitzrayim, this was Hashem's message to them that it's time to bring Yosef and Yaakov together. And the same thing is with Yosef's message to Yaakov. When he saw that after 22 years they're trying to find him, he understood that there's something deeper going on here. Since he didn't know for certain that the time had come, that if he would inform the Yaakov Avinu before the Shvatim themselves confessed to Yaakov, this would affect the relationship between Yaakov and the Shvatim. Yosef did not send a quick messenger and right away to Yaakov that he's alive. Rather, he told the Shvatim, I am Yosef, your brother. They made the Chedim, they knew that when the Eibishter wants, that now it's the time to reveal to Yaakov that he was alive, and therefore they went and they told Yaakov that Yosef Chai. So now, all of our questions are answered by bringing these few Rashis together. And if someone was to ask you, why didn't Yosef tell Yaakov that he's alive? So what do you mean? Rashi already said there was a Chedim. The Eibishter joined the Chedim. Because the Eibishter joined the Chedim, Yitzchak joined the Chedim. Obviously, Yosef joined the Chedim as well. And only once Yaakov received the message that Yeshev Mitzrayim, Shvatim understood that there was time had come to reveal it, and they went to find Yosef. Yosef saw the Shvatim looking for him. He understood that it was time to reveal himself, and then so he revealed himself, and they gave the Shvatim the opportunity to go back to Yaakov and say, "Hey, Yosef Chai."